Welcome to 26.1 AI Podcast. Today we welcome one of the founders of Just One Giant Lab, Leo Blondel. Just One Giant Lab is the first research and innovation laboratory operating as a distributed, open, and massive mobilization platform for collaborative task solving. And that's from their website at jogl.io.
Welcome, Leo.
Hi, welcome, Brian. Welcome, Don. Thank you for having me on the podcast.
So excited to have you here.
Yeah, where are you located today, and how'd you get there?
I'm in France, and I got there because I'm French. I'm in the south of France right now, where it's nice, sunny, and
Lovely.
beautiful. Yeah, yeah.
Brian, you love bouillabaisse, right?
I love the south of France. Like it's one of my favorite places in the world. So, and what led you to first about you, and then second about JOGL?
hmm
But how did you get in your progression of life to JOGL, and what is JOGL?
Yeah, sure. Okay, well, so quick life story for me. So I've always been fascinated by technology and science. My dad had, has been a tech entrepreneur for forever, and so I didn't want to become a tech entrepreneur because I didn't want to become like him. So I went to science instead, and then I, continued the route in academia all the way to doing my PhD at Harvard in computational biology. But then that's when I sort of realized that I wanted to change things and how the world was, and I wanted to build things. So I eventually became a tech entrepreneur trying to make just one giant lab. So the cycle sort of closed that way. Why I became to want to create just one giant lab is a little bit of a personal story, but I've been an activist in many domains for ever. And in academia, I was confronted with the fact that science is made in a sort of an ivory tower, where there are big institutions like Harvard or Stanford or the ENS or many other big institutions in the world like this, which hold most of the money and most of the knowledge, and that this is published in peer-reviewed but non-open or accessible journals. And so science was basically created by this small circle of people in the world, and that it was not very open. And I believe in inclusivity and transparency and openness, and I believe science would actually benefit from this. In my life, I've seen so many examples of young high schoolers doing amazing science project that would, later change the world as we know it, and that happened across history, and it's still happening today. And if you want to convince yourself, just go on TED. There's so many TED talks like this. So I kind of wanted to change how this situation was, and that's when like I knew Mark Santolini for a long time. We've been friends for a long time, and then we met with Thomas, which is the third co-founder, and the three of us sort of had the same idea at the same time, and the energy to just try to start it and do it. And that's why we created Just One Giant Lab. um, so JOGL is this uh, interesting object where we're trying to take the beauty of what a laboratory in academia is, which is a place where you can collaborate, you can talk to people, it's easy, you can reach out to others to help you achieve the science experiment you're trying to do right now. But to do this in a decentralized and open manner, right? So we want to break that wall and we want to open it to everybody in the world, whether you're a high schooler or a retiree or a researcher in academia right now. Like we want everybody to be able to collaborate on those things. And so we're trying to build technologies around that because we believe technologies can empower people to do those sort of things. And so in that sense, that's why I've focused a lot of my time and effort over the last years trying to build this open source web software called Just One Giant Lab that is now being super successful online with many thousands of people coming and collaborating on it right now.
Since Joggle is about collaboration, let's take it to the root and talk about the interaction between you and Thomas and Mark, the
Mhm.
founders, collaborating. How
Mhm.
do you work together?
Um, so we have this like 30 minute an hour meeting every day, where we it's very important to synchronize all of that information. So we like talk every day for an hour, and then we all go in our own different sort of bubble of people we work with. We do the work there. We like highly specialize bees, doing like I do the tech, Mark does a lot of the science of the communities, and Thomas does a lot of the organizing and coordination of the people. And like it's like the three of us have like very strong skills in those domains. And so instead of walking over each other, we just like agreed to just like synchronize and discuss as much as possible, trying to give all the information we can to each other, so we can all collectively make decisions and then go and actually be productive in our own bubble, without disturbing each other. I guess, yeah, that's how we we collaborate on a day-to-day basis.
Well, moving to how people collaborate on your platform, you've got a COVID-19 project going. Maybe describe that as kind of a case study.
Sure. So, in earlier this year, well, everybody probably is aware of this COVID-19 crisis that started, and so one of the very first thing that was needed was that there was a shortage of masks, right? So, basically, on JOGL, there was a project that was started by Thomas and friends of him to try to make open source and open design for masks. And this just exploded, where hundreds of people started to gather around it, and very quickly we're like, wow, JOGL is cool, actually we could do other project around like COVID-19 here. And so from this appeared a bubble which we called Open COVID-19, which we made into a program where we then recruited people to actually help coordinate the community. And so to do that, people can come on JOGL and they can create a project. On that project they can fill out needs, and all of this is searchable throughout the platform. And so that if you have a particular set of skills, you'll be able to like look for needs that you could do right with your skills. And so that's for the sort of organization part. And in order to organize the community a bit better, we are using external tool, especially now we're using Slack, because we don't have the the technology in house at the moment to have this sort of high level communication happening within JOGL itself. So Slack allows us to coordinate the community at like thousands of people using well crafted channels and coordinations with humans. So for now we're there, but we are learning from this experience to try to apply what we know and what we're doing on Slack onto JOGL itself. And that's going to be the next step sort of for 2021. We're hoping to be there and not have to use external tools like Slack.
So when you are creating these tools in this community around these tools, solving these problems, how does the grander ecosystem of collaborative, benefiting science, if you will, also just open source and GitHub and that revolution, how does that feed into this, or is this different from those other efforts?
Oh no, it's not different. I mean, GitHub is, and I guess to me, the open source community, because I've been involved in it since ever, is very much an inspiration, right? The entire code base of JOGL is open source, and we're working every day to make it easier for people to read the code and be able to participate on it, right? So it's heavily inspired from the philosophies of open source collaboration. And before us, open science collaboration with journals like PLOS and PNAS, for example, trying to bring science openly. I'm also a huge fan of Sci-Hub, for example, which really tried to open up
Yeah.
uh, journals, like access to journals to everybody. Like I personally have friends who are in Iraq right now, researchers there, and like they ask me for papers from time to time because their institutions can't afford to pay the millions and millions and millions of dollars Elsweiser is asking. So yes, we're building on the shoulders of giants, right? Like the techniques we're using, the code base we're using, the technologies we're using are open. They're built by other people before us. We're just one more stone on this ginormous wall that we're trying to build together as humanity, which is like a better world for everybody, I guess.
Don, you know what it reminds me of? Aaron Schwartz and that story there. Someone I
Well,
mentored.
yeah,
And
I was going to ask you if you think Aaron Schwartz, who I don't think smiled a lot, would be smiling right now, Brian.
I,
Since Brian, you know him you knew him very well.
I, well, I knew as a child I knew him, but it brings up the question is for Leo, where are your challenges? I mean, are you ever challenged with accessibility to some of the data, or where is the what's your biggest challenge right now with
uh,
JOGL?
to be fair, the biggest challenge we are facing is, I think, right now is the speed at which we're growing, and so we need to scale very rapidly. But for information, we went from a team of like the three co-founder plus two people in February before open COVID-19, and then with the whole open COVID-19 crisis, we went where we're now 15 at JOGL, which is huge. And so we went from like 4 to 15, and then we need to keep scaling up. So one of the big issues we have right now is like to redo all of the processes internally and reinvent how we are doing things together, to do it better. That's one of the main challenges. But other challenges that we're facing is, we want to be able to convince academia, right? We want to be able to convince researchers that what we're bringing is valid, and it's as valid as the scientific process in those institutions that are already well established. And that will take years, right? Like, I believe we will, but it will take years, and it will take many successful projects and successful cases for academia to consider us a serious research laboratory in the world, right? And so for that, it's going to take time, and it's going to take developing very smart internal technologies. How do we review a publication, right? What's reviewing at the JOGL level? Because we don't have the peer review system of journals, because we don't want to. We want to invent better systems, right? And so we're talking with many researchers trying to reinvent this right now. And we're trying to build better intelligent systems for collaborative reviewing at multi-scale of paper, right? Like, what if we change the paper level, go to a micro publication where it's just like this one figure or this one experiment? Can you review just that thing because you're an expert in that, but someone else is an expert in something else, so we can review another part of the paper, right? So how do we make the review process stronger, better, and easier to do in a decentralized manner? This is a big challenge that we're facing as well, right? So there are many challenges, to be honest, but so far we've just been tackling them one at a time, and just, that's the thing with complexity, right? Like, when you're faced with a complex problem, you can either just stop and say, like, it's too complex, I can't do it, or you can just say, okay, well, let's take tiny bits at a time and build them, and connect them with each other, so that eventually you have a beautiful complex system that works.
In the way that you're proposing for folks to collaborate, where do you prioritize addressing bias in AI models? Where is that
Hmm.
for you as a founder?
Yeah. So one of the big thing that we're trying to avoid is bias and bubble effect, and like many of the problems that exist with AI today, which is that algorithms are made by some people who have some good idea, right? But then they're not trying them too hard, or they're not considering that the bias is a problem, because as long as you're clicking and the ad revenue is increased, well, that's great. You're winning. We don't want to do this, so we're using newer types of recommender system which are based on heterogeneous information network, and we're collaborating with a researcher, Pedro Ramaciotti, which is basically an expert in that domain, who is currently building a new form of recommender system that is much better at avoiding biases and avoiding bubble effects, right? And so with this help, the whole internal artificial intelligence system of JOGL should avoid biases as much as possible. It's never possible to completely avoid biases, but we will always try to. And we are, at the same time as we're building the AI, we also have a team of researcher led by Mark mostly, who is looking at the information of what's happening, right? So like the effect of the AI on the behavior of users is analyzed so that we can see whether or not we're creating bubbles or avoiding bubbles. How do we go across the bubbles? And so those sort of things, we're measuring them, and we're going to keep measuring them in the future to avoid as much as possible bias in our AI system.
So, can you define for some of our listeners bubbles? What do you mean when you're saying that?
Oh, so what I mean by bubbles is so if you if you ask an AI to learn about many users and their behaviors, they the AI, if you don't introduce any counter parameter, the AI will just try to predict what you would mostly like, and then you're gonna click on those things, right? And the AI will then learn, okay, well, I predicted this, and this person clicked on it, therefore I'm gonna learn to more strongly recommend this to that person, right? And this feedback loop effect will is one of the way that it could happen, but this feedback loop effect will eventually lead to the AI only showing you what you click on, and what you click on is often what you like, right? Or at least what sort of interests you. And in that way, you're starting to be trapped in a very small universe of possibilities that the AI will recommend to you, right? Because they will all score higher than anything else. And at that point, you become like if you were in a bubble, and that's kind of what people refer to as the bubble effect. Is when, however hard you try and whatever you do, you will only see, like, the AI will only recommend you the exact same type of video. A very good example of this is if you go on YouTube, and I'm pretty sure all of your listeners have a YouTube account. If they go on YouTube, just look at the recommended video and just try to look at it from a different eye, right? The next time you go, just look at them and try to categorize them into different types of category: science video, political videos, animal documentaries, whatever it is, right? And just try to look at which one pop up on your screen in the recommended page on the home, right? And look at the diversity there. And you'll see that there's not that much diversity. YouTube is always going to recommend you the same sort of videos, across. Actually, if you even do this better, you'll even realize that it does it at different time of the day differently. So if you watch documentaries at night, it'll give you the night bubble documentary, right? And so that's a bubble, and you'll be trapped in that. I don't know if that helped, Brian, to explain what the bubble effect is, but
No, absolutely. Great. Yeah, thank you very
Well,
much.
I mean, Leo, I feel like you just described Time Magazine's cover about American society right now.
yeah.
Well, there's truth to that, right? I mean, there really is. There's truth to that self-defining populations of how media is delivered and whatnot. I mean, I believe
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I'd love to ask this question. So, in you using AI, you're a promoter of it, you understand it very deeply, I can tell. But what is the precautionary tale with AI today? What should our audience, which is both business and data scientists,
Mm.
are there any fears that you have of anything regarding AI?
Oof, I have many fears. I have many fears because AI is a tool, right? And such as the hammer that you can use to nail something, you can also use to kill, right? And AI has the potential for good and bad and evil. And the problem with AI is that it's not regulated, right? We have laws. If you use a hammer to kill someone, we arrest you. You go to jail, right? Um, if you do evil with AI at the moment, no one's going to arrest you. No one's going to do anything to you, right? At worst, you might lose some profit for your company, which like might be damageable to the 0.1% richest on this planet, but it's not that much. That's one of the main issue, like actual ethics and philosophy and of regulating AI. Like this is something that I think is missing, and that people should seriously consider, that we need to implement yesterday, so that the systems we put in place would be regulated, so that they avoid critical effects, right? And like we see it with, I mean, the election of the current president of the United States, that according to some is based on very good AI by Cambridge Analytica, right? That's one example of how this whole thing can go awry.
Leo,
Hmm.
Brian and I, we're in an American bubble. You brought up regulation. Do you have a view in terms of where that starts? Do you see Europe leading that as opposed to the United States?
Europe is in this sort of very interesting zone, right? Because it's, in a way, a lot more democratic than the US, and in another way, a lot more bureaucratic than the US. And so there's always this sort of battle where I don't know if any of you followed the GDPR regulation, which a lot of people are talking, which is the privacy laws on the internet for European citizens, which is a great start, to be fair. And it started even better, where a lot of activists had worked and proposed a text that was really, really good and really well done. But then eventually, once it passed the parliament, it got sort of watered down a lot, in order to make it more doable, like make it more achievable at a bureaucratic level of how to follow up, how to check if the GDPR was actually applied and things like this. So in that sense, Europe is trying to lead, because the US, for example, has no such thing as GDPR, and GDPR is a great step forward. It's not enough. There is a lot of discussion in Europe about AI and data privacy, and use of the data by what we call the GAFAM, Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, and Microsoft. They're like the big player, the big giants. And so a lot of people are definitely discussing, how do we make AI safer for everybody. I hope Europe will take a lead in this. We have historically been good at asking deep ethical and philosophical questions about technology. We're really bad at implementing them and making the technology. We're really good at thinking. America is really good at doing. I think that's one of the big difference. I don't know. I hope America will actually follow suit also. But the problem with America is that you have such a strong military industrial complex, with the NSA being very, very powerful, in the balance, and lobbying of, like the GAFAM at Congress as well is also super strong. So until America has a bit more democracy in terms of how laws are decided, I doubt it will be a leader in that.
Wow, it just sounds like you would have a great conversation with Brian and my friend Peter Wong, the CEO of Anaconda.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's been on our show before too, and yeah, I think we would have a wonderful. We should have that conversation, in fact, and I want to. But we're heading close to our 26.1 minutes. That at least in America, that's the average commute time. So that's our time to stop, so people can listen, get out of their car, which people are not doing right now, ironically,
Yes.
and go to work. But any closing statements? Any way to do you want to leave the listeners with a way to find you, or or
Sure.
interact?
I mean, I would love for the listeners, actually, what I would love is for everybody who will listen to this to go on JOGL, JOGL, .io, or just type in just one giant lab on Google. It'll be easier. And to just go and navigate, and just like see the website. And if what I said today, you're not seeing anything of what I tried to communicate today, please send us an email and tell us, like, hey, I think you could improve by doing this, and you could probably correct this bug here that I just discovered, or actually come and participate on projects if you have the time and skills. Please come help. We have beautiful project ranging from teaching in Africa, or across the world with Lecturer Without Borders, to making open source masks, respirators. We have projects that are doing COVID-19 test kits, open source, soon to be distributed for virtually free, and at par with the best available commercial ones. At least that's what their data is showing right now, is that they're getting at least as good result as any commercial ones, and they're doing this open source for free. Amazing. So come, just participate, collaborate, tell us what's better, what could be made better. We would love to hear that, because this is a community project, right? We're open, we're transparent, we want to be with the community and exist with the community, so that this whole thing exists of its own and survives if I die tomorrow. That's the idea.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being on our show. It was loved listening to you. It was great.
It
What,
was really, really cool talking to you too. Thank you very
wonderful,
much.
Leah. Wonderful.
Yeah.